Welcome to 21st Century Dating Decoded. We're making modern love simple. Get ready to decode your love life. Brought to you by Mingle.
So I want you to picture this. You are exactly 10 minutes into a traditional three-course first date.
Oh, no. I already know where this is going.
Right. The appetizers have literally just hit the table. Maybe it's a deeply uninspired lukewarm spinach dip or some aggressively overpriced rubbery calamari.
The staple of every mediocre first date.
Exactly. So you take a sip of your water, you look across that stiff white tablecloth, and it just hits you with the physical force of a freight train. You have absolutely zero chemistry with the person sitting across from you.
None. The banter is just completely dead.
The silence is totally deafening, and the panic sets in. Pure panic. Because the unwritten social contract of the traditional sit-down dinner basically dictates that you are now officially trapped.
You are. You are entirely locked into this 2-hour sedentary interrogation.
Yeah, you have to awkwardly navigate the arrival of the entrees, the clearing of the plates, the agonizingly forced small talk about, like, their morning commute or maybe their thoughts on mid-tier television shows.
All while just dreading that glacial wait for a $200 bill. It feels less like a romantic evening and more like a financial penalty for time poorly spent.
A financial penalty. I love that phrasing. And honestly, you are describing what we like to call the entree trap.
The entree trap. Yeah, it has essentially become the defining anxiety of modern courtship because the architectural structure of a sit-down dinner forces this level of commitment that just entirely outpaces the actual emotional connection between two strangers.
Well, on that cheerful note, welcome to today's deep dive. Our overarching mission today is completely decoding 21st century dating.
We are getting right into the messy stuff today.
We really are. We're taking a magnifying glass to the absolute bone-deep exhaustion that single people are experiencing right now. But more importantly, we are exploring the ultimate real-world remedy that millennials and Gen Z are actively adopting to save their sanity.
And reclaim their Friday nights in the process. We are pulling from an incredibly diverse and heavy stack of research today to accomplish this.
So what exactly are we looking at?
Well, we will be synthesizing some recent sociological master's theses on digital intimacy, including a really brilliant 2025 study from Erasmus University Rotterdam.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and we are pairing that alongside comprehensive global consumer insight reports on dating behaviors, specifically tracking the massive shifts that happened in 2026.
And we've got some travel and foodie elements too, right?
Exactly. We are weaving in specialized global travel guides, heavily focusing on the underground culinary and nightlife scenes in places like Barcelona and New York City.
Because, as we're going to see, the remedy to our digital burnout is actually entirely physical. We are breaking down a kinetic, multi-stop micro-dating trend known as tapas hopping.
Tapas hopping. It is completely changing the game.
It really is. So I want you, the listener, to imagine your own dating life right now. Instead of viewing it as this passive, exhausting swiping game where you are glued to your couch, imagine it as a dynamic, intentional, relational portfolio.
I mean, we are going to show you how physical movement and shifting environments can actually do the heavy lifting of dating for you.
But to understand why tapas hopping is completely dismantling that archaic 3-hour dinner date, we first need to look at the digital landscape. We need to establish the specific psychological environment we are operating in today.
Right. We are currently living in an era defined by what sociologists call the datification of intimacy.
The datification of intimacy. I mean, I have to say, that sounds incredibly clinical. It just strips all the poetry out of romance, doesn't it?
Oh, the clinical nature is the absolute core of the issue. This concept stems directly from the research of sociologist de Ritter.
Okay, break that down for us.
So his premise is that modern romance has been entirely co-opted by a relationship model designed to be mathematically predicted and algorithmically controlled. Attraction, serendipity, compatibility. It's all been reduced to mere quantifiable data points.
So we aren't even people anymore, we're just stats.
Exactly. When you log onto a dating platform, the architecture of the app treats you fundamentally as a customer. The platform is selling you the concept of a romantic relationship by matching your aggregated personal data against a massive, localized pool of other users.
Let me try a different analogy here, because the old comparison of dating apps to scrolling Netflix feels a bit played out at this point.
Yeah, I agree. What do you have in mind?
Using these apps today feels much more like modern real estate flipping. You have these platforms basically encouraging users to strip out all of their unique quirks.
Like painting over the original hardwood floors.
Right. You hide the weird hobbies, the specific humor, the actual humanity, just to create a profile that appeals to the broadest possible market. You end up with these sterile, gray, soulless products.
They'll look great on paper, and they check all the boxes.
Exactly, they tick the boxes, but when you actually walk inside, nobody wants to live there. It is completely hollow.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it, and it perfectly aligns with what Manuela Soleil Martin identifies in her master's thesis on Gen Z and digital intimacy.
What did she find?
She points out this massive paradox. These applications offer what feels like an infinite, boundless horizon of possibilities for connection right in your pocket.
Which should be a good thing, theoretically.
Logically, yes.
Yeah.
Having millions of potential partners mathematically filtered for your specific preferences should lead to unprecedented romantic success. But instead, it results in what she terms emotional ambivalence.
Emotional ambivalence. So we are essentially standing in front of the biggest buffet in human history, and we are completely starving to death.
That is exactly it. We have everything we could possibly want, but we feel entirely disconnected from the concept of wanting it.
Because the interaction is just entirely mediated by a screen, right?
Yes, and driven by algorithmic filtering, which severely degrades the user's emotional stamina. It causes profound swipe fatigue.
Swipe fatigue. I think everyone listening has felt that in their thumbs and their souls.
Oh, definitely. The sheer ease of connecting with multiple people cultivates a psychological illusion that a mathematically perfect match is just, one more swipe away.
So you never actually settle for the person in front of you.
Right. It devalues the person currently in front of you. This dynamic actually revitalizes a much older foundational sociological theory by Zygmunt Bauman called liquid love.
Liquid love. I mean, I like the phrasing, but knowing sociology, I assume this isn't a compliment about how love flows easily.
Not at all. It is actually a devastating critique of modern society. Bauman uses liquid love to describe the fragile, fleeting nature of contemporary human bonds.
As opposed to solid bonds.
Exactly. In a hyper-consumer-driven, liquid modern society, connections themselves are treated as disposable commodities. Historically, human bonds were solid. They were tied to village geography, economic survival, or strict family structures.
Right, you couldn't just walk away because you got slightly bored.
Today, if a relationship requires too much friction or effort, or if a slightly more optimized, shinier option appears in your notification tray, the path of least resistance is to simply discard the current connection and swipe again.
Wow. So the market logic of mass consumerism hasn't just stayed in the shopping mall. It has fully infected our personal lives.
Completely.
We are literally evaluating human beings the same way we evaluate a blender on Amazon. We look at the star rating, we check the specs, and we just return it if it makes a weird noise on day 2.
It is the literal McDonaldization of intimacy. Standardized profiles, rapid filtering mechanisms, and an obsessive focus on efficiency-oriented matching over organic discovery.
But wait, if these apps are mathematically optimizing our matches, and we have more access to potential partners than any generation in human history, why is it failing so spectacularly?
That's the million-dollar question.
I mean, the data clearly shows that Gen Z and millennials are partnering up less, having less sex, and reporting higher levels of loneliness. If the algorithm was working, we wouldn't all be so miserable.
The contradiction you are highlighting is exactly where the system is breaking down. The data from 2026 proves that singles have reached a terminal breaking point with this algorithmic optimization.
They are just entirely over it.
Yeah. A massive survey by Plenty of Fish analyzing the top dating trends for 2026 reveals that daters are actively, aggressively dropping their rigid, must-have checklists.
Really? Throwing out the lists.
They're abandoning the algorithm's false promise of the mathematically perfect partner because they have finally realized that perfection on paper rarely translates to actual chemistry in person.
That makes total sense. I mean, I was looking at the Coffee Meets Bagel report for this deep dive, and it stated that 93% of their users find dating emotionally challenging.
93%.
93%. When a product has a 93% frustration rate, the users start looking for a completely different system.
Exactly. And the POF data highlights a specific counter movement they call true casting. This is the practice of showing up completely unfiltered, with zero digital or emotional facades from the very first interaction.
Just putting it all out there on day 1.
Right. 1 in 4 singles report actively doing this now. They are demanding emotional safety as a non-negotiable baseline. Singles are entirely rejecting the games, the figure-it-out-yourself communication styles, and the performative mystery. They just want radical transparency.
It's a massive demand for quality over quantity. The endless churn of collecting matches just to feel a little hit of dopamine, which, going back to Bauman's theory, is basically consuming another person's attention as emotional currency, has completely lost its appeal. People are just exhausted.
The digital realm has become incredibly taxing. It drains emotional reserves without providing any real return on investment. Which brings us directly to the physical framework that daters are utilizing to bypass this digital anxiety.
The escape hatch.
The escape hatch from the McDonaldization of intimacy.
Let's get into the sociology of the hop then. Because if the digital swipe is failing and the 3-hour traditional dinner date is a claustrophobic trap, we need a new architecture for human connection.
We need to move.
Yes. Tapas hopping, or bar snacking, as some guides call it, is this strategic, deliberate pivot away from sedentary dining. Instead of sitting at one table for the entire evening, daters hit 3 to 4 distinct spots in a single night.
Ordering just one small plate and a drink at each venue.
Right. We are observing a fundamental shift from static architecture to kinetic architecture. And there are 4 distinct structural drivers that make this kinetic approach the ultimate defense mechanism against the modern bad date.
Let's break those down. The first driver is the creation of the exit ramp. This is entirely about low stakes and risk mitigation.
The exit ramp is brilliant. Let's say you meet up with someone from an app. Within 5 minutes, you realize they look absolutely nothing like their heavily filtered 5-year-old profile photo.
A classic modern horror story.
Or worse, they sit down and immediately launch into a bitter monologue about their ex. In a traditional dinner, you are held hostage by the pacing of the kitchen.
You have to wait for the salads, then the mains, then the check.
It's agonizing. But on a tapas hop, you finish your single vermouth at stop 1, you set the glass down, and you simply say, "It was so great meeting you, but I actually have an early morning and need to head home." You just bow out politely after 30 minutes.
You have successfully mitigated the emotional risk of the encounter without violating any social contracts. The second structural driver is the mitigation of financial risk. We really cannot ignore the economic realities of 2026.
Oh, inflationary dining is a nightmare.
It has turned a standard dinner into a massive high-stakes investment. Dropping $200 on an unproven, potentially disastrous connection is just economically irrational at this point. Tapas hopping introduces dynamic financial flexibility.
It completely neutralizes that terrible looming dread of the massive final bill. When you are just splitting a $20 or $30 check per stop, the financial pressure just evaporates.
It really changes the tone of the whole night.
And you also completely avoid that awkward, performative who pays debate at the end of the night. One person grabs the tab at the first bar, the other grabs the second. It creates a feeling of communal equity rather than a massive lopsided financial burden.
Exactly. Now, the third driver is what consumer insight reports categorize as vibe variety and the atmospheric reveal.
The atmospheric reveal, that sounds like magic.
It kind of is. When you sit at one single table for 2 hours, you only gather a very static, narrow data point on who this person is in a highly controlled environment.
Right. You are basically just interviewing their restaurant persona.
But when you move a person through multiple environments, say transitioning from a loud, high-decibel cocktail lounge to a quiet, dimly lit outdoor patio, the changing environment acts as a behavioral catalyst.
The environment basically does the interviewing for you. You get to see how they treat a stressed bartender in a crowded room.
Yes. Or how they handle the mild adversity of a place being fully booked and needing to pivot to a backup plan.
Exactly. You see how they adapt their volume and energy to different social speeds? That gives you so much more raw, accurate data about their character than a scripted Q&A session over a bowl of pasta.
The shifting contexts force authenticity. And the fourth driver is the kinetic momentum itself. The physical act of walking side by side between venues serves as a built-in, low-pressure activity.
This is a godsend for introverts, or honestly, anyone who hates that forced interview-style eye contact across the small table.
It can be so intimidating.
It really is. Walking shoulder to shoulder between venues significantly lowers cortisol levels. It completely eliminates those agonizing, awkward lulls in conversation.
Because there's always something to look at.
Right. You can talk about the architecture you are walking past, the weird street performer on the corner, or the smell of the bakery next door. The city itself becomes the third participant in your date, carrying the conversational weight when you need a break.
It's brilliant design. Now, if we pull back and look at the sociology of this movement, tapas hopping is actually the physical manifestation of Anthony Giddens' concept of confluent love.
Okay, I was reading through Giddens' notes on confluent love in preparation for this deep dive, and I have to push back here.
Go for it.
It struck me as incredibly transactional. He's essentially arguing that in late modernity, we only enter into and maintain relationships for as long as they provide mutual, continuous satisfaction to both parties.
That is his core premise, yes.
But if the satisfaction drops, the relationship ends. How does that not just turn us into romantic accountants? Aren't we just treating people like software subscriptions we can cancel at any time?
Yeah.
How is confluent love any better than Bauman's liquid love?
It is a vital distinction, and your skepticism is totally warranted. Liquid love is about treating the person as a disposable commodity in a marketplace of endless options. Confluent love, however, is about the contingency of the connection. Traditional marriages of the past were bound by economic survival, property rights, or strict social necessity. People stayed together even if they were miserable because the structure demanded it.
Right, you couldn't leave.
Giddens argues that today, relationships are based on individual autonomy and mutual emotional benefit. It is not about commodifying the person. It is about demanding that the relationship itself remains a healthy, synergistic space.
Okay, so how does that philosophy actually map onto walking between 3 different bars in Barcelona?
Because the kinetic circuit of the tapas hop operates entirely on the mechanics of confluent love, the hop only continues if the vibe remains synergistic.
I see.
You only mutually agree to walk to the second venue if the first venue provided equal satisfaction to both parties. You only proceed to the third venue if the second was similarly rewarding.
So the date persists strictly on the condition of ongoing mutual enjoyment.
Exactly. It requires constant, active consent to continue the shared experience.
Okay, I see the philosophical appeal, but let's talk logistics. Because if I am planning a first date, organizing 3 different venues sounds wildly stressful.
It can be, if you don't know what you're doing.
Right. What happens if the second bar is totally full? Doesn't the rejection of a full bar ruin that synergistic vibe? Isn't there a massive risk of this just devolving into a frantic, chaotic pub crawl where you're constantly checking your watch and wandering the streets aimlessly?
That is the exact trap that amateurs fall into. And it is why the global travel guides establish specific professional standards for this format.
Oh, there are professional standards.
Absolutely. It is not a pub crawl. A pub crawl is focused on alcohol consumption, endurance, and losing control. Tapas hopping is a highly curated, deliberate 3-act structure. The unpredictability of the city is managed through strategic planning.
Let's give the listener the actual blueprints then. We're going to walk you through the exact anatomy of a flawless tapas hop, utilizing real locations from the absolute capitals of this trend, Barcelona and New York City.
The architecture of the hop is defined by 3 specific stages, operating under 3 non-negotiable rules. Rule 1 is the no reservation rule.
That feels counterintuitive.
You prioritize walk-in institutions to maintain maximum pivot potential and avoid the pressure of strict timelines.
Okay, that makes sense. You don't want to be rushing the date because you have an 8 p.m. slot somewhere else.
Exactly. Rule 2 is the bear-only mandate. Tables are the enemy of the kinetic date. They trap you in static energy and force that face-to-face interrogation we talked about earlier. Sitting or standing at the bar forces shoulder-to-shoulder intimacy.
Less that.
Rule 3 is the lean carry strategy. Keep your personal items minimal, especially in high-traffic urban zones, to maintain physical agility and comfort.
Nobody wants to be lugging a massive tote bag from bar to bar. Let's put this into practice. Stage 1 is the icebreaker. This is your baseline chemistry check.
The most crucial 10 minutes of the night.
Absolutely. The primary goal here is incredibly low stakes. You want to shake off the stress of the workday, transition into a social mindset, and figure out if you even want to spend another 60 minutes with this human being.
The ideal environment for stage 1 is high energy, casual, and strictly standing room only. You require a space that forces immediate physical and social proximity, naturally breaking down personal space barriers without feeling forced.
In Barcelona, this perfectly mirrors the ancestral vermouth ritual. You meet up at a loud, dimly lit, historic tavern. You order vermouth over ice, which is a fortified wine flavored with botanicals, often served with a siphon of sparkling water, and you pair it with something incredibly simple, like tinned sardines or plump olives.
It's so atmospheric.
The condensation is dripping down the glass, the bartender is shouting orders, and you are just absorbing the chaos together. It's a natural social bridge. Now, if you are in New York City, you might hit a spot like D'Espagna in the Lower East Side.
D'Espagna is a perfect tactical choice because it completely subverts the expectations of a traditional restaurant.
It's essentially a hybrid Spanish grocery store and cafe.
Yeah.
You walk in, the air smells intensely of cured meats, the walls are stacked with imported olive oils, and they have this little tapas counter in the back.
It's very casual.
Exactly. You grab a quick bite, maybe some world-renowned jamón ibérico or a slice of tortilla española, and you literally just stand around eating it. The psychology of standing up is huge here.
You don't feel settled.
You feel alert. If the vibe is terrible, you literally just say, well, I need to buy a wedge of manchego cheese and head home. The exit ramp is instantly achieved.
It is brilliant. However, if the baseline chemistry passes the test and the banter is flowing, you mutually agree to transition to stage 2, the core connect.
This is where you actually slow down and get to know each other.
The objective shifts from mere assessment to establishing comfort and facilitating deeper, more vulnerable conversation. The environmental requirements shift accordingly. You are seeking a mid-tempo, dimly lit, cozy space.
So no more standing.
Right. You transition from standing to sitting, again, preferably at the bar, and you order substantial, complex, small plates designed specifically to be shared.
Sharing the food is the secret weapon of stage 2. It forces a collaborative interaction. You have to negotiate. How do you want to split this? Are you okay with garlic? Do you like spicy?
It creates a microdynamic of compromise and care.
It really does. In Barcelona, the travel guides point to places like La Fonda in the Gothic Quarter. You sit in that beautiful, moody, movie-set interior and share their unbelievable truffle and mushroom risotto. The smell of the truffle oil alone creates a sensory memory.
Oh, absolutely.
Or you head to La Cova Fumada in Barceloneta. It's a gritty, no-frills spot operating since 1903, and you order the bomba. It is this literal explosion of flavor, a crispy, deep-fried potato croqueta stuffed with spicy meat topped with aioli and brava sauce.
And in New York, the Consumer Insight reports highlight venues perfectly suited for this, like Boqueria, where you might collaboratively devour creamy jamon croquetas or perfectly seared octopus. Or you venture to Lovara in Cobble Hill for Basque-style coquinillo, which is this incredibly tender, slow-roasted suckling pig. The guiding philosophy here is what the experts call the share the love principle.
What does that entail?
You purposefully order half portions. This maximizes flavor variety and sensory input without triggering early onset satiety. You want to remain physically light and energized, avoiding that heavy post-dinner lethargy that kills the romantic momentum.
Nothing kills a vibe faster than feeling like you need a nap. Which brings us to the crucial pivot point of the evening. Stage 3, the crossroads, or the finale. You've survived the icebreaker, you've navigated the deep, vulnerable conversation over the seared octopus, and now you stand on the street corner and make a choice.
Do we extend this night or do we elegantly end it?
Exactly. If the mutual consensus is to wrap the evening up on a high note, you opt for a playful, low-commitment finale, a walkable dessert spot, or a quiet neighborhood speakeasy for a nightcap.
The nice soft landing.
Right. If you are in Barcelona, you stroll down to Chocolate Street Carrer de Patrixol. You walk into the Palaresa, a dairy that has been serving locals since 1947, and you order freshly fried churros. They come with this insanely rich, thick, dark chocolate sauce that is basically pudding.
That sounds incredible.
It is a sweet, warm, nostalgic way to close the loop on the date. But let's say the date is going incredibly well. The chemistry is undeniable, and you want to truly push the boundaries of the evening. You opt for what the guides call sensory theater.
This is where a world-renowned venue like Paradiso in Barcelona becomes highly relevant to our discussion.
Tell us about Paradiso.
Paradiso was ranked the #4 best bar in the world in 2026. From the exterior, it is designed to look like a completely ordinary, slightly run-down pastrami shop. But you approach this retro white refrigerator door, pull the handle, and step into a massive, tropical, visually stunning cocktail wonderland.
It sounds amazing, but here's the massive catch. They strictly enforce a no reservations policy. It is walk-in only. If you show up on a Friday evening, you are going to be waiting in line for an hour and a half to 2 hours. Just standing on the pavement, I have to push back here. Standing in a 2-hour line with a first date sounds like absolute torture. Doesn't that completely destroy the kinetic momentum we just spent 2 stages building?
Under normal circumstances, yes, a 2-hour queue is an operational failure. However, the dating experts reframe the Paradiso queue as the endurance test.
The endurance test. So we are intentionally stressing the system.
Precisely. Surviving a shared challenge is one of the fastest psychological accelerators for intimacy. I want you to imagine standing in that queue for 120 minutes with someone you met just 3 hours ago.
That's a long time to make small talk.
It is. But if you can endure that wait on a crowded Barcelona street, shifting your weight, dealing with the elements, and still find yourselves laughing, engaged in deep conversation, and actively resisting the urge to stare at your smartphones, you have essentially condensed 3 months of traditional dating into a single night.
You have proven profound compatibility.
You've battle-tested the connection.
And the reward waiting behind that refrigerator door is highly theatrical. The mixology of Paradiso is absurd. They have cocktails like the Great Gatsby made with Macallan 12-year-old whiskey and white truffle honey, which they literally smoke live at your table using a glass dome and vanilla chocolate.
It's an entire performance.
Or the Kryptonita, a glowing neon drink infused with Szechuan peppercorn that creates a literal electric tingling sensation in your mouth.
It acts as an unforgettable capstone. The psychological effect of this three-act structure is profound. Moving a person through 3 distinctly different environments, with varying lighting, soundscapes, and flavors, creates the psychological illusion of having experienced 3 entirely separate dates.
That makes a lot of sense.
It fragments the chronological time in a way that feels incredibly dense and memory-rich. This vastly accelerates the feeling of familiarity and intimacy.
It is brilliant. You are essentially hacking human brain chemistry to build a massive shared history in 4 hours instead of 4 weeks. But here is where we need to widen the lens.
Let's pan out.
We have spent a lot of time talking about New York and Barcelona, which represent a very Western approach to escaping digital burnout. But what happens when we look at how entirely different cultures with different social pressures are adapting to these exact same algorithmic rules of intimacy?
To answer that, we have to examine a vital, incredibly illuminating 2026 comparative study focusing on Chinese university students in Shanghai.
Okay, let's dive into that.
What this rigorous study proves is that the datafication of intimacy, the reduction of human romance to algorithmic code, is not just a localized Western problem. It is an inescapable, systemic, global phenomenon. The exhaustion we are detailing is universal across digital platforms worldwide.
The researchers in Shanghai looked specifically at users on apps like Tantan and Soul, which function essentially as the Chinese equivalents to Tinder and Hinge, right?
Yes, exactly.
And they analyzed user behavior through the lens of a framework called social exchange theory.
Social exchange theory, or SET, is a fundamental sociological concept. It posits that human beings continuously evaluate the potential rewards and costs within any social interaction.
We are always doing the math in our heads.
We are. We are driven to maintain relationships that generate a net positive outcome, whether that outcome is emotional support, status, or companionship. We are constantly, often subconsciously, assessing reciprocity, measuring our emotional investment, and weighing alternative options.
And when you are sitting on your couch swiping on an app, you are being violently bombarded with thousands of alternative options per minute. The scale of the alternatives completely breaks the traditional set calculation.
Exactly. In the digital era, SET explains how users are forced to dynamically recalibrate their expectations of exchange logic. The Shanghai study identifies 3 distinct chronological levels of digital dating engagement that almost every user cycles through.
Let's go through those levels.
Level 1 is exploratory entry.
This is the honeymoon phase of the app. It is when you first download Tantan or Hinge. The primary driver here is novelty.
You're just checking it out.
You are gathering information, figuring out how the swiping mechanism feels, testing what kind of photos get responses. You are driven by uncertainty and the sheer thrill of immediate, low-stakes interactional feedback. You get a match, your phone buzzes, and you get a little spike of dopamine.
But the novelty inevitably wears off, and the user transitions to level 2, strategic recalibration. This is where the grim reality of the McDonaldization of intimacy truly takes hold of the user's psychology.
This is where it gets dark.
It does. Users begin to engage in increasingly brutal selective filtering. They stop looking for serendipity and start treating the experience with cold, efficiency-oriented cost management.
Because they have hit the wall of exhaustion. In the study interviews, the students in Shanghai literally described this phase as like shopping for products on an e-commerce site or endlessly scrolling short videos on TikTok.
It becomes utterly mindless.
They realize that the platform only rewards superficial metrics. Profile photos, listed height, educational background, and overt income indicators become the only primary screening cues. So, in response, the users start strategically managing their own profiles as competitive resources in a ruthless relational economy. They optimize their photos to project higher status.
It becomes an arms race of digital presentation. Finally, the users reach level 3, reflexive negotiation. This is the critical, often painful stage. The users begin to attend much more closely to the actual sustainability of these connections.
So they start looking for real meaning.
They step back and start to fundamentally question the meaning of digitally mediated intimacy itself. The study notes a divergence here. Some users develop what researchers call love efficacy.
Love efficacy, what is that?
It is a subjective, hard-won confidence in their personal ability to navigate the swamp of these apps, to actually extract a real meaningful connection. They learn how to filter out the noise.
But other users experience the exact opposite outcome. They hit a wall of diminishing emotional returns. There were 2 specific interviewees in the Shanghai study who noted something deeply tragic.
What do they say?
The sheer accumulation of short-term, optimized digital encounters had actively eroded their psychological capacity for sustained, intimate investment. They literally stated that frequent dating on the apps made it harder for them to take any new relationship seriously.
That is the ultimate tragedy of the mathematically optimized swipe. The marginal value of each subsequent new match declines closer to 0, and the emotional resonance of meeting a new human being completely fades into white noise.
It's so bleak. But, the detail in the Shanghai study that absolutely fascinated me the most was the cultural nuance surrounding the concept of mianzi, or face.
Oh, this is such an important part of the research.
Even when these students successfully navigated all 3 levels, even when they beat the algorithm and found a long-term partner on Tantan or Soul, they actively engaged in what the researchers call underground usage.
This is a vital cultural observation. The students would actively, deliberately hide the true origin of their relationship.
They would lie about it.
Yes. Within their specific social context, intimate relationships formed through natural, offline, physical encounters are still culturally regarded as far more socially legitimate and pure than those facilitated by a matchmaking algorithm.
So, if you sit down at a family dinner, or you are out with your university friends and you admit that you met your serious boyfriend by swiping right on Tantan while waiting for the bus, it results in an immediate loss of reputational capital.
It devalues your perceived desirability or the seriousness of the romance.
Because of that stigma, these couples literally invent elaborate fake meet-cute stories. They curate a socially acceptable physical world narrative to protect their face and legitimize their love to their peers.
It exposes a profound global irony in our modern condition. An entire generation across entirely different continents and cultures is completely reliant on algorithms to find love. Yet universally, the human psyche still deeply craves the romanticized, socially acceptable meet-cute.
We want the movie moment.
We do. We inherently recognize that the algorithm is sterile, and we desperately want the serendipity that the digital platforms have engineered entirely out of our lives.
Which forces me to ask the biggest, most terrifying question of this entire deep dive.
I'm ready.
Are we fundamentally ruining our capacity for long-term resilient love by treating dating like a strategic video game? The Shanghai study literally uses the phrasing of leveling up in love. Is this infinite abundance of choice, this constant, exhausting social exchange calculation, actively eroding our biological and psychological ability to commit to one flawed human being? Are we optimizing ourselves completely out of the ability to connect?
That is the fear. But that specific exhaustion with the game, that creeping societal realization that digital optimization does not and cannot equal emotional fulfillment, is the exact catalyst driving Gen Z to redefine the end goals of dating entirely.
So they are pushing back.
They are rejecting the premise of the game entirely. Which leads us to our final major shift of the deep dive. We are observing a massive sociological move toward fluid intentions.
Let's unpack fluid intentions, because honestly, this is where I find the most hope in all of this research. Daters are actively replacing the rigid, traditional romantic scripts of previous generations.
The scripts that demand a ring or a breakup.
Right. The script that says a date must definitively lead to a monogamous relationship or a marriage, otherwise it is a catastrophic failure. They are replacing that with a much more open, resilient mindset.
We see the statistical proof of this in the Plenty of Fish 2026 data. They identified a massive, growing behavioral trend that users are calling love luring.
Love luring, or as the internet calls it, dating for the plot. And the survey found that 37% of singles say they go on dates simply to see where the story leads.
They are intentionally releasing the pressure of the outcome.
They are embracing the messy, unpredictable experience of meeting a stranger rather than demanding a specific, guaranteed romantic return on their time investment.
It requires a radical openness to ambiguity, and this mindset gives rise to a whole new lexicon of connection. Terms like chemistry.
Chemistry, I love the new slang.
It's great. It describes the phenomenon of catching unexpected, intense feelings for someone based purely on their in-person charisma, their kinetic energy, and their conversational rhythm, rather than their static 2D profile pictures.
The data also points to curveball crushing, which is when you find yourself falling for someone completely outside of your usual algorithmically defined type.
42% of singles report experiencing this.
That's huge. They are actively ditching the checklist. They are ignoring the math and focusing entirely on the actual, palpable, in-person vibes. And when you look at it through this lens, it becomes incredibly obvious why tapas hopping is the absolute perfect physical vessel for this new mindset.
Because the architectural and temporal structure of tapas hopping perfectly supports and even encourages fluid outcomes.
Think about the mechanics of it. If you go on a traditional, expensive sit-down dinner date and there is absolutely no romantic spark across the table, the entire night feels incredibly transactional and bitter.
You feel like you wasted your time and your money.
You feel like you wasted your Friday night, you wasted $200, and you failed. But on a tapas hop, the structure is inherently low pressure and adaptable. If the romantic chemistry isn't there after you finish your vermouth and olives at Stock 1, but you are still having a genuinely decent, intellectually stimulating conversation, the hop can seamlessly pivot.
The Erasmus University thesis specifically noted that Gen Z is highly open to alternative, non-traditional forms of intimacy. If romantic love isn't present in the room, the connection doesn't have to be discarded as a failure.
It can become something else.
It can shift into a platonic friendship, or what sociological researchers are terming queer kinship, or simply a shared, joyful culinary exploration of the city for one night.
It's like applying modern networking principles or even a venture capital mindset to human connection. It is adopting a fail-fast methodology for romance.
A fail-fast methodology. That's a great way to put it.
You aren't committing your entire life savings, meaning your entire Friday night and a massive dining budget, to one unproven startup. You are diversifying your relational portfolio. You grab a quick bite. If the romantic vibe isn't there, you pivot the business model.
You utilize the exit ramp.
You either utilize the exit ramp and end the night early, or you transition the evening into a fun, platonic food crawl.
It completely removes the suffocating pressure of performative courtship. You are no longer two actors sweating through a pre-written script across a white tablecloth. You are two humans participating in a shared, kinetic, sensory discovery of an environment.
So after digging through master's theses, global dating surveys, and underground bar guides, what does this all mean for the person listening to this right now? Let's bring all these threads together.
If we synthesize the core message from this massive stack of research, the conclusion is undeniable. We are undergoing a massive structural, societal shift in how we seek and validate human connection.
A total paradigm shift.
We are rapidly moving away from sedentary, performative, digitally optimized dating and moving toward kinetic, experiential, physically grounded connection. The traditional single-venue dinner date has become a recognized symbol of stagnation, financial anxiety, and trapped obligation.
And the alternative.
Conversely, the tapas hop and the broader movement of kinetic dating signals autonomy, authenticity, adaptability, and forward motion.
It is the literal physical cure to the digital burnout that the apps have caused.
It reclaims the vital in-person start that the algorithms have slowly stolen from us over the last decade. It acknowledges a fundamental truth. Human connection cannot be reduced to a mathematical formula or a filtered grid of photos.
You can't code chemistry.
Shared physical environments, shoulder-to-shoulder movement, and the friction of spontaneity are the essential, irreplaceable catalysts for actual intimacy.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative thought to mull over as we close out this deep dive. We have spent the last hour breaking down how dating apps mathematically optimize our profiles.
Crunching the data.
They crunch millions of data points, location, age, income, swipe history, to present us with the supposedly perfect mathematical match.
They offer a mathematical ideal of love, scrubbed of all friction. But then we look at the undeniable reality of why the tapas hop actually works. It requires the physical chaos of a crowded, noisy tapas bar in Barcelona.
It requires the friction.
It requires the mild embarrassment of spilling a little vermouth on the counter. It requires bumping shoulders with strangers, navigating a bustling, unpredictable city street, and surviving a 2-hour wait in line on the pavement just to actually feel a genuine, undeniable human spark.
It demands the messy, unscripted reality of the physical world.
So here's the question for you, the listener, to take with you and examine in your own life. If algorithms, no matter how advanced they become, can never successfully replicate that messy, serendipitous physical chaos, will the future of romance eventually abandon the digital swipe entirely?
A total digital detox for dating.
Will we ultimately realize that serendipity simply cannot be coded, and that the only way to find real connection is to delete the apps, step out your front door, and get back into the physical world?
It is a massive question, and it's one that every single person navigating this modern landscape is going to have to answer for themselves. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
If this discussion resonated with you, or if it just saved you from a terrible sit-down dinner date this weekend, please hit that subscribe button, drop us a 5-star review on whatever platform you're using, and absolutely share this link with that one friend who is still using an expired filter on a dark 5-year-old headshot. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
They desperately need the intervention.
They really do. Send them the link. Until our subsequent deep dive, remain deliberate, maintain protection, and consistently date with a defined purpose.
Welcome to Speed Mingle.
Where making real connections happens in
Stream,
seconds.
swipe, socialize, your ultimate connection network.
Jump in now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Speed Mingle Network.